On the afternoon of Saturday, the 8th of August, 2026, at 1:46 in the afternoon, I stood for 3 minutes at the granite headstone of my nephew Devin Marcus Acheampong Bridges in Section 32, Plot 1414 of Crown Hill Cemetery on Boulevard Place in Indianapolis, Indiana. He had been dead for 6 years and 10 months. He would have turned 30 the next day. I placed one yellow chrysanthemum from the back garden of my sister Ya on the granite shoulder of the stone above the engraved letters of his given name. I placed beside the chrysanthemum a small brass mortar and pestle pin from the Indiana State Board of Pharmacy, dated 1974, which my father had given to me on Christmas morning of 1995 in the kitchen of his brick ranch house on Wabash Street in Hammond, on the day I was promoted to Group Supervisor at the Drug Enforcement Administration Diversion Control Division Chicago Field Office. I did not say anything aloud. I did not bring a folder. I did not bring the press release. I did not bring the 412-page memorandum I had written about the corporation that had owned 3 of the 4 pharmacies in which my nephew had filled the prescriptions that preceded his death by 14 days. I stood for 3 minutes. I turned. I walked the 73 meters of gravel path back to the dark gray Ford Edge sport utility vehicle that I had parked at the cemetery gate. I drove 89 miles north on Interstate 65 to the brick ranch house of my parents in Hammond. My father was in his recliner watching the Indianapolis Colts preseason game. My mother was at the stove making jollof rice. My father, without preface, in Twi said, "Adwene awakiri no, wadimu." The mind that follows you, you have lived inside it. I said in English, "Yes, Dad." My mother set a plate of jollof rice in front of me. We ate. We did not discuss the cemetery. We did not discuss the 412-page memorandum. We did not discuss the $350 million settlement that the United States Department of Justice had announced 1 year and 3 months earlier, on the 22nd of April, 2025. The press release of that day named the corporation. It did not name any individual employee, officer, or director. It did not name the chief executive officer. It did not name the board of directors. It did not name the rotating layer of 3 to 5 vice presidents of pharmacy operations who had served between 2009 and 2024. It did not name the 78 district managers who had received the unsigned monthly fills per hour ranking PDF for 15 years. It did not name the 47,000 pharmacists who had filled the prescriptions under the throughput pressure of that ranking. It did not name my nephew, Devin Marcus Acheampong Bridges, who had filled 9 months of early Norco refills at 4 pharmacies along a 280-mile multi-state corridor between Indianapolis, Cookeville, Tennessee, and Florence, Kentucky, and who had died alone in his apartment on East Pleasant Run Parkway South Drive in Indianapolis on the 23rd of September, 2019, of fentanyl toxicity in a counterfeit M30 pressed pill. The press release does not name the dead. The dead are aggregate. My name is Nathaniel Adjei Osei-Acheampong. I am 55 years old. I am a retired group supervisor of the DEA Diversion Control Division Chicago Field Office, 28 continuous years from January of 1990 to September of 2018. After my retirement, I worked for 67 months as an independent contractor through the risk advisory practice of a major professional services firm on a single client engagement with the Corporate Compliance Office of the largest retail pharmacy chain in the United States. I was terminated from that engagement on the 16th of May, 2024, in a 4-minute and 11-second cell phone call from a director of strategic auditor engagements named Margaret Hutchinson Brennan Whitfield. The phrase she used was, "Scope reduction." I do not narrate, I document. This is what I documented. Let me tell you how it was built. The Lutheran Cemetery section of Crown Hill on Boulevard Place is quieter than the rest of the grounds. Section 32 is on the east edge, on a flat field separated from the older monuments by a long row of bald cypress trees that turn rust orange in November. Plot 1414 is in the 3rd row from the east fence. It contains 2 stones. The older reads, Lamar Anthony Bridges, 1961 to 2017, UAW Local 23, husband, father, brother, friend. The newer reads, Devin Marcus Acheampong Bridges, 1996 to 2019, son, brother, nephew, godson, waits for us. The lettering is in standard United States Veterans Administration depth, although Devin was not a veteran. Ya chose the font 3 weeks after the funeral. We did not say aloud why we chose it. The stone was set in May of 2020. My father, Kwame Adwoa Osei-Acheampong, was born on the 11th of March 1944 in the village of Patase on the southern edge of the city of Kumasi, in what was then the British Gold Coast and is now the Ashanti region of the Republic of Ghana. He was the third of 7 children. He completed a 4-year program at the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi in 1966 with a degree in pharmacy. He worked for 6 years at the Kumfo Anokie Teaching Hospital Pharmacy before he decided in the summer of 1972 to emigrate to the United States. He left Accra on a Pan American World Airways flight on the 7th of November 1972. He arrived at John S. Kennedy International Airport on the 8th of November. He was 28 years old. He had 1 canvas suitcase, a New Testament from the Methodist congregation in Patase, a folded letter of introduction from the Kumfo Anokie pharmacy director, a Polaroid photograph of his mother, and 187 United States dollars in his wallet. The Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service Indianapolis chapter, through a sponsor coordinator named Mrs. Helena Pruitt Galloway, met him at the airport. She drove him to a rental room in the home of a Lutheran congregation member in Indianapolis, where he lived for 14 months while he prepared for the Foreign Graduate Equivalency examination administered by the Indiana State Board of Pharmacy. He sat for the examination on the 3rd of February 1974. He passed. The board issued the license on the 17th of March. He drove 45 miles north on Interstate 65 to Hammond on the 24th of March in a borrowed 1966 Pontiac Catalina and reported for his first day of work at Lakeshore Drugs on West Sycamore Street. Lakeshore Drugs occupied a 1-story brick storefront with a green and white awning. The pharmacy counter ran along the back wall. The owner was Saul Greenwald, who had bought the storefront in 1961 and had been looking for a junior pharmacist he could trust. My father took the counter on the first day at 8 in the morning. He wore a white pharmacy coat and a navy knit tie, and on his lapel he wore the small brass mortar and pestle pin from the Indiana State Board of Pharmacy. He stood at that counter for 35 years. He retired on the 31st of August, 2009, at the age of 65. The storefront sold the following year to a money transfer franchise. The green and white awning came down. I have not gone into the storefront since. My mother, Akosua Ya Boateng Bonsu, was born in Hammond, Indiana, on the 2nd of June 1949. Her parents, Kofi Bonsu and Adwoa Mensah Bonsu, were the first generation of Ghanaian Americans in the Calumet region. My grandfather Kofi had emigrated from the village of Bekwai in 1947 on a sponsorship arranged through the Ghanaian Seamen Association at the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad freight yards, and had worked as an iron worker on the bridge crews maintaining the Calumet River steel approach trestles for 34 years. My grandmother Adwoa emigrated 3 years later. They were married in the chapel of the Bethlehem Lutheran Church on Sibley Street in Hammond in October of 1950. My mother was their first child. She received her bachelor degree in elementary education from Indiana University Northwest in Gary in May of 1972. She taught 3rd grade at McKinley Elementary School in East Chicago for 39 continuous years. My father and my mother were married in the chapel of the Bethlehem Lutheran Church on the 12th of January 1973, 6 weeks after my father arrived in Indianapolis. The arrangement had been made between my paternal grandmother in Patase and my maternal grandmother in Hammond through Lutheran missionary correspondence. The two families had not met in person before the wedding day. There were 67 guests in the basement fellowship hall. There was jollof rice, fufu with peanut soup, baked ham, and a sheet cake. They moved into the brick ranch house on Wabash Street in 1974. They paid off the mortgage in 1994. They have not lived anywhere else. I was born on the 18th of October 1971 at St. Margaret Mercy Hospital in Hammond. My sister Osei-Acheampong was born on the 4th of June 1974 at the same hospital. I attended Caldwell Elementary, Spohn Junior High, and Hammond High School, graduating in May of 1989. I attended Indiana University at Bloomington from August of 1989 through May of 1993 on a Hammond Educational Foundation scholarship. I majored in criminal justice with a minor in chemistry. I graduated with honors. The framed photograph that sits on the mantel in the living room of my parents in Hammond was taken at the Bloomington commencement on the 8th of May, 1993, by my mother on a Polaroid Sun 660 camera. I am wearing the academic gown over a navy suit and a red and white tie. My father is on my left, in the same navy suit he had worn at his wedding 20 years earlier, with the small brass mortar and pestle pin on his lapel. My mother is on my right in a yellow Sunday dress. I keep a copy on the bookcase in the Lake Forest home office. I look at it most mornings. I had applied to the Federal Career Internship Program at the Drug Enforcement Administration in February of my sophomore year at Indiana University in 1990. The program accepted me. I worked 3 summer internships at the Chicago Field Division on West Roosevelt Road. By the 3rd summer, the group supervisor in diversion control, Henry Calderon Ortiz, had decided that I would come on permanently after my graduation. I reported for duty as a Diversion Investigator GS-7 at the Chicago Field Division on Monday the 12th of July, 1993. The Diversion Control Division of the Drug Enforcement Administration is responsible for the regulation and enforcement of the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 as it applies to the legitimate manufacture, distribution, and dispensing of controlled substances inside the United States. The relevant authority is codified at Title 21 of the United States Code, Section 823, Subsection B, Paragraph 1, and at Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Parts 1301 through 1308. The Pharmacist Corresponding Responsibility Doctrine, on which the entire architecture of retail pharmacy controlled substance regulation rests, is codified at Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 1306.04. That regulation provides that a prescription for a controlled substance to be effective must be issued for a legitimate medical purpose by an individual practitioner acting in the usual course of his or her professional practice, and that the responsibility for the proper prescribing and dispensing of controlled substances is upon the prescribing practitioner, but a corresponding responsibility rests with the pharmacist who fills the prescription. The pharmacist is not a clerk. The pharmacist is the second federal gate. That sentence is the first sentence on page 1 of the second day of the Diversion Investigator Basic Course at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. I sat through that course in the autumn of 1993. I served as a diversion investigator at the Chicago Field Division from July of 1993 through August of 2003. My casework concentrated on retail pharmacy diversion in the Indiana, Illinois, and southern Wisconsin districts. I closed approximately 85 field investigations during that 10-year period. I attended George Washington University in the evenings from January of 1999 through May of 2002 and earned a Master of Science in Forensic Drug Chemistry. I was promoted to Senior Diversion Investigator and transferred to the Detroit Field Division in September of 2003. The Detroit assignment ran from 2003 through August of 2008. I returned to Chicago in September of 2008. The detail was made permanent by promotion to Group Supervisor at GS-13 on the 17th of January 2014. I authored 2 interim retail pharmacy diversion training modules that the Diversion Control Division headquarters published as continuing education materials for entry-level diversion investigators in 2012 and again in 2016. My wife, Imani Folake Osei-Acheampong, and I were married on Saturday the 4th of September 1999 in the chapel of the Cook County City Hall in downtown Chicago. Imani had been born in Lagos, Nigeria in 1974, raised in London, Ontario from the age of 7. She had graduated from the Schulich School of Medicine and Dentistry at the University of Western Ontario in 1998, completed her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Chicago in 2004, and joined the North Shore University Health System in Highland Park, Illinois, as a board-certified attending OB/GYN in 2007. Our son, Kwame Osei-Acheampong, was born on the 22nd of November 2003. He attended Lake Forest High School, graduated in 2021, attended Tuskegee University on a 4-year academic scholarship, graduated in May of 2025 with a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering, and accepted a position at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, in the Space Launch System Block 1B Liquid Engine Mounting Structures Group. I retired from the Drug Enforcement Administration on the 30th of September 2018 at the age of 47, with 28 years of federal service and a full annuity under the Federal Employees Retirement System. The retirement send-off was held in the conference room of the Chicago Field Division on Friday afternoon, the 28th of September. The special agent in charge presented me with a wooden plaque and a black aluminum challenge coin. I gave a 4-sentence speech. I thanked my colleagues. I thanked my family. I said I had been honored to serve. I said the work was the work. I drove home to Lake Forest. I told Imani I would take 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, I would decide what came next. On the 22nd of October 2018, I met for breakfast at the Walker Brothers Original Pancake House in Wilmette with a former colleague from the Detroit Field Division, Aaron Calloway Mendez, who had retired from the DEA in 2015 and was now a partner at the risk advisory practice of a major professional services firm. Aaron offered me a senior independent contractor role on the firm pharmacy compliance practice, with a single client engagement at the Corporate Compliance Office of the largest retail pharmacy chain in the United States, in Deerfield, Illinois. The contractor rate was $380 an hour, billed against an annual deliverable cap of approximately $600,000. I told Imani that night. She said, "You should take it. The work is what you know how to do." I started on the 15th of October. The Corporate Compliance Office at 200 Wilmot Road in Deerfield occupies the 4th floor of the south wing of Building 3. The campus is approximately 150 acres of low, landscaped corporate buildings and surface parking. I checked in at the security desk on Monday the 15th of October at 8 in the morning. I received a temporary contractor badge with a yellow stripe. I rode the elevator to the 4th floor. I was met by a senior auditor named Trevor Yamamoto Bregman, who escorted me to a windowless conference room called the Sycamore Room and gave me a 57-page onboarding binder. On the morning of the 17th, I was issued a corporate laptop, a corporate email address, a Cisco AnyConnect VPN client, and an access badge with weekday hours from 6 in the morning to 9 in the evening. The Director of Strategic Auditor Engagements, who would be my primary client contact, was Margaret Hutchinson Brennan Whitfield. I met her for the first time on the morning of the 17th of October in the Magnolia Room. She was 43. She had been raised in River Forest. She held a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature from Loyola University Chicago in 1997 and a Juris Doctor from Loyola Chicago School of Law in 2001. She had practiced at K&L Gates from 2001 through 2008, then joined the Corporate Compliance Office, where she was promoted to her current title in 2018. She was a competent and self-contained corporate attorney of the kind that staffs the 3rd tier of the compliance function at a Fortune 100 consumer health corporation. She was married to Theodore Whitfield, a partner at JLL in Chicago, and they lived with 2 teenage children in Wilmette. She was, on her face, neither cynical nor cruel. She was a person executing a function inside a corporate architecture. The architecture was the antagonist. She was a working part of it. The first audit deliverable, scheduled for completion on the 15th of December 2018, covered a sample population of 240 corporate retail stores in the Upper Midwest District, focused on Schedule II controlled substance ordering through DEA Form 222, and on the corresponding responsibility documentation logs maintained at the store level. I drafted the deliverable in 5 sections. The 5th section flagged a small statistical anomaly at the store-level fills per hour rate for Schedule II opioid prescriptions in 14 of the 240 stores. The flagged stores exceeded the national chain average by 34 to 71%, with a documented absence of pharmacist-generated corresponding responsibility decision notations on the store-level dispense logs for those same periods. I delivered the report on the 11th of December. Margaret reviewed the deliverable. She emailed me on the morning of the 13th. The email read in its entirety, "Nathaniel, this is a thoughtful and well-structured deliverable. Thank you for the work. The Section 5 flag is an interesting angle. I will take it under advisement at the next quarterly." I did not hear about Section 5 again. I learned, over those 67 months, that the Corporate Pharmacy Operations Division operated under a single primary performance metric. The metric was fills per hour. Each of the approximately 8,200 retail stores reported a daily aggregate, rolled up to a monthly store rate, rolled up to a district manager-level monthly average across the 78 district manager territories, published in a monthly internal PDF titled Top 100 Store Operational Excellence. The PDF was distributed by an unattributed sender from Pharmacy Operations Division headquarters to all 78 district managers and to the rotating layer of 3 to 5 vice presidents of pharmacy operations who served between 2009 and 2024. The PDF ranked the stores from 1 to 100 at the top and from 1 to 100 at the bottom. The PDF was unsigned. It was undated except for the month and year. It was the architecture of the throughput pressure. I saw it for the first time in February of 2019. I saw it every month for 64 months thereafter. I did not retain copies. I made a paper note of the file name, the month, and the top 3 and bottom 3 store identifiers each month in a paper file folder I kept in the locked top drawer of the second-floor home office desk. On Monday, the 23rd of September, 2019, at 9:42 in the morning, Central Daylight Time, I received a telephone call from my sister, Ya, on my contractor cell phone. I was at the desk in the Sycamore room at the Corporate Compliance Office in Deerfield. The contractor's cell phone rang. I saw the name of Ya on the display. I stepped out of the Sycamore room and I answered the call near the elevator bank. Ya said, "Nathaniel, I went to the apartment of Devin this morning to take him a hat. The door was unlocked. He was on the floor of the bathroom." I said, "Ya, I need you to do 3 things. Are you ready? First, call 911 if you have not already done that. Second, do not touch anything. Third, sit down on the front porch and wait for the responders." She said, "I called 911 12 minutes ago. The squad is here." I said, "I am leaving Deerfield right now. I will be at your house in 3 hours." I ended the call. I told Trevor Yamamoto Bregman that I had a family emergency. I drove south to Lake Forest, packed an overnight bag, and drove on to Indianapolis. I arrived at the house of Ya on West 56th Street at 3:11 in the afternoon. The Marion County Coroner Deputy had been there for 40 minutes. The body had been transported to the coroner office on Alabama Street at 1:15. Ya was on the front porch in a green coat, with my mother on the porch swing beside her. My father was in the kitchen, leaning on the counter, looking at the kettle. They had driven down from Hammond at noon when Ya called my mother. Lamar Bridges had been dead for 2 years, 8 months. I sat on the porch beside Ya. I held her hand. I did not say anything for a long time. After a while, I said, "I have to go to the coroner office." She said, "Nathaniel, do not look at him." I said, "I will not look at him. I am going to see the certificate." She said, "Okay." I drove to the Marion County Coroner Office on Alabama Street. I asked at the front desk for the Chief Deputy Coroner on duty. The Chief Deputy was a Dr. Carlina Mosley Pruitt. She came to the lobby. I introduced myself by name and by my recent retirement title at the DEA Diversion Control Division. I said, "I am the godfather of the decedent. The family will need the cause and manner statements. I would like to know what you find before the family does so that I can help my sister hear it." She nodded. She said, "The cause is going to be opioid toxicity. The manner, accident. Toxicology will take 3 weeks." I said, "Can you tell me whether he had a prescription for any opioid?" She said, "The apartment had a pill bottle for Norco 5325, 3 days remaining of a 30-day supply. The most recent refill was filled on the 18th of September at the East 16th Street store." I said, "Any other pill bottles?" She said, "No." I said, "Suspected pressed pill." She said, "M30 fentanyl pressed. We have been seeing it across the corridor for 2 years." I said, "Doctor, will the autopsy phrase be specific?" She said, "The autopsy phrase is going to read fentanyl-laced hydrocodone counterfeit, pending toxicology confirmation." I said, "Thank you." I drove back to the house of Yah. The funeral was held on Saturday, the 28th of September 2019, at the Light of the World Christian Church on East 38th Street in Indianapolis. The church was full. There were approximately 400 mourners. I served as a pallbearer with the brother of Lamar, Anthony Bridges, with the high school football coach of Devon, Eddie Vasquez Jr., with the Indiana State University roommate of Devon, Marcus Boateng, with my brother-in-law, Kunle Folarunso, and with my son, Kwesi, who had flown in from Tuskegee on the Wednesday. The casket was a closed mahogany. The reception was held at the house of Yah. I do not remember the order in which I spoke to anyone. I remember sitting in the kitchen at 1 in the morning with my father, who was in a wooden chair against the refrigerator, and my mother, who was at the sink, and Yah, who was at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. I remember my father, after a long silence, saying in English, "The family has work tomorrow. We should sleep tonight." We slept that night. On Sunday, the 29th of September 2019, at 3:47 in the afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table of the brick ranch house of my parents on Wabash Street in Hammond. My mother was at the stove making jollof rice. The September afternoon light came through the lace curtain above the kitchen sink and fell across the yellow Formica countertop. My father was across the table from me. He was wearing a white short-sleeve shirt with no tie. There was a cup of black tea in front of him. He had not spoken since I walked in. I had driven up from Indianapolis that morning. My father, without preface, in Twi, said, "Adwene awakirino, wadimu." The mind that follows you, you have lived inside it. I repeated the sentence in my head in English. I placed my right hand flat on the tabletop. I did not speak. My father did not speak again. My mother brought the jollof rice to the table. We ate. After we ate, I drove the 140 miles north to the Lake Forest house. I arrived at 7:19 in the evening. That night, in the second-floor home office, I did not open the contractor laptop. I opened my personal Lenovo ThinkPad. I logged into the corporate retail pharmacy chain internal RxNet validation portal through my Deloitte VPN on a single sign-on credential authorized for contractor read access. I typed in the 4 addresses Yah had given me on the Saturday afternoon. The 4 addresses were the 4 pharmacies where Devin had filled his Norco prescriptions over the previous 9 months. The first was a store on West 38th Street in Indianapolis. The second was a store on South Highway 111 in Florence, Kentucky. The third was a store on East Spring Street in Cookeville, Tennessee. The fourth was a store on East 16th Street in Indianapolis. Of those 4, 3 were operated by the corporation that paid my professional services firm to audit its corresponding responsibility compliance. The fourth, the Florence, Kentucky store, was operated by a competing chain. I queried the RxNet portal for each of the 3 corporate stores. The portal returned, for each store, the dispensing record for Devin Marcus Acheampong Bridges. The pattern was immediate. Devin had filled an initial Norco 5325 prescription on the 17th of January 2018 at the West 38th Street store, written by an Indianapolis orthopedic surgeon 2 weeks after the surgical repair of his anterior cruciate ligament tear at IU Health Methodist Hospital. He had refilled it 5 times over the spring at the same store. The prescription had run its course in May. There had been no refills for 4 months. The pattern resumed in October of 2018 on a new Norco prescription written by a Cookeville, Tennessee general practitioner, filled at the East Spring Street Cookeville store, monthly through the end of 2018 and into 2019. In April of 2019, the prescription pattern had migrated to a third prescriber, an Indianapolis pain medicine physician, with the fills moving to the Florence, Kentucky store. In July, it had migrated again to the East 16th Street Indianapolis store, on a prescription from a 4th prescriber. The fills at East 16th Street had continued through the 18th of September, the most recent fill before the death 5 days later on the 23rd. I closed the corporate VPN. I opened Indiana Inspect 2.0 on my retired DEA personal PDMP access credential, retained as a registered diversion investigator emeritus for 3 years post-retirement. The query matched the corporate RxNet records. I queried Kentucky Casper. It returned the Florence fills. I queried the Tennessee Controlled Substance Monitoring Database. It returned the Cookville fills. None of the 3 state databases had been cross-queried by any of the 4 pharmacists who had filled the prescriptions. Each of the 3 prescribers, on his or her own record, had written a clinically defensible prescription. Each of the 4 pharmacists, on his or her own record, had filled a prescription consistent with the prescriber authority. None had run a single cross-state query. The architecture had been available since late 2016. The cross-state query on the Devon fill chain would have returned a multi-prescriber, multi-state pattern that any trained diversion investigator would have flagged within 90 seconds. The cross-state query had not been run. I closed the Lenovo at 12:14 in the morning of the 30th of September, 2019. I did not cry. I opened the bottom right-hand drawer of the desk. I took out a yellow legal pad. I uncapped a black ballpoint pen. I wrote in capital letters in my own handwriting, Walgreens Corresponding Responsibility Erosion, Devon Analysis, October 2019. I underlined the title twice. On the second page, I wrote a 1-line scope statement covering the corresponding responsibility doctrine under Title 21 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 1306.04, as applied to the retail pharmacy chain corporate parent in the context of the multi-state opioid prescription fill chain of Marcus Acheampong Bridges. On the third page, I wrote a comparison cohort design for approximately 247 Indiana resident decedents aged 22 to 26 who had died of opioid-related causes between 2017 and 2022. On the fifth page, I wrote the multi-state PDMP cross-query specification for the Devon fill chain. I closed the legal pad at 1:57 in the morning. I did not go into the bedroom. I sat in the second-floor office chair in the dark for a long time. I went to bed at 3:12. The first page of the legal pad was page 1 of what would become, in the 4 years and 7 months that followed, a 412-page memorandum. From October of 2019 through May of 2024, I worked the contractor engagement at Deerfield by day and the analysis at home by night. The corporate engagement work proceeded normally. I delivered audit reports on schedule. I attended quarterly review meetings. I met with Margaret Brennan Whitfield approximately every 6 weeks. I produced 240 audit reports over the 67 months. From the outside, in any human resources record at the Corporate Compliance Office, I was a senior independent contractor in good standing. The homework proceeded on a separate track. I ran the multi-state prescription drug monitoring program queries on my retired registry credential through the Indiana Inspect 2.0, the Kentucky Casper, and the Tennessee Controlled Substance Monitoring Database portals from the second-floor home office on my personal Lenovo ThinkPad on consumer Wi-Fi. I never ran a single query on the contractor laptop. I never ran a single query on the corporate VPN. The wall between the contractor work and the home work was the load-bearing structure of the analysis. The wall was the only thing that would keep the analysis admissible if it ever became evidence in a federal proceeding. Over the 4.5-year period, I ran approximately 4,847 multi-state PDMP queries against a cohort of 247 Indiana resident decedents aged 22 to 26 who had died of opioid-related causes between 2017 and 2022, identified through cooperative reference desk search at the Indiana University School of Pharmacy and the Indianapolis Public Library System. The cohort statistics were unambiguous. 214 had filled prescriptions for opioid medications at corporate retail pharmacy chain stores in the 24 months preceding death. 187 had filled at multiple stores within a single 12-month period. 134 had filled at stores in 2 or more states. 118 had filled its stores in the Indianapolis to Cookeville to Florence corridor. 107 had filled at the same 4 corporate stores I had identified in the chain of Devon. The corridor was a corridor. The stores were the 4 stores. The pattern was a pattern. I cross-referenced the cohort fill data against the corporate retail pharmacy chain monthly top 100 store operational excellence portable document format file. Of the 4 corporate stores in the corridor, 3 had appeared in the monthly top 100 at the upper end of the fills per hour distribution at least 18 times each over the period from January of 2017 through April of 2021. The East 16th Street store had appeared in the top 100 upper quintile 22 times. The pattern of the top 100 at the corporate level was the architecture of the throughput pressure. The corporate ranking was the institutional incentive to fill the prescription quickly and not to cross-query the multi-state prescription drug monitoring program database. The corresponding responsibility doctrine, under Title 21 Code of Federal Regulations Part 1306.04, requires a pharmacist's judgment at the time of fill. The top 100 ranking incentivized that judgment towards speed and away from cross-state cross-query. The fills per hour metric was the gate around the corresponding responsibility doctrine. In February of 2022, I wrote a 41-page anonymous preliminary findings memorandum, and I forwarded it through a former DEA colleague named Anthony Caldera Riley, then a senior diversion investigator at the Diversion Control Division headquarters in Springfield, Virginia. I did not sign it. The cover sheet read, "From a federal practitioner with knowledge of the regulated industry." Anthony hand-carried it on the 13th of February, 2022. He did not ask me whether I was the author. He did not need to. On Tuesday, the 12th of April, 2022, the Diversion Control Division formally launched a nationwide audit operation of the corporate retail pharmacy chain, Corresponding Responsibility Compliance, internally codenamed Operation Charlemagne. The Charlemagne preliminary intelligence was, in part, the 41-page memorandum. The Corporate Compliance Office in Deerfield knew that the Charlemagne audit had started. The Corporate Compliance Office did not know that I was the source of the preliminary memorandum. I did not tell anyone. I never confirmed the authorship in any communication with anyone in Deerfield. In November of 2023, I received a telephone call at home on a Saturday afternoon from a former corporate senior director of pharmacy operations named Stefan Hyacinth Mbweni Robles. Stefan was 47, Tanzanian American from the Detroit metro area, with an MBA from the University of Michigan Ross School. He had been a senior director of pharmacy operations at the corporate retail pharmacy chain from 2016 through January of 2022, when he had departed over an unrelated bonus structure dispute. He was now adjunct at the DePaul Driehaus College of Business. We had met 3 weeks earlier at the National Association of Chain Drugstores annual conference. Stefan said, "Mr. Osei-Acheampong, I have some material from my time at the corporate parent that I believe you would find professionally relevant. I would prefer to hand-deliver it in a public setting." We met at the Walker Brothers Original Pancake House in Wilmette, Illinois, on the morning of Saturday, the 4th of November, 2023, at 7:48 in the morning. Stefan was wearing a navy blue zip-up jacket over a white shirt. He had a winter overcoat folded on the bench beside him. He had ordered a pot of coffee but had not poured himself a cup. I sat across from him in the booth. He slid a sealed manila envelope across the Formica tabletop. He said, "This is 47 internal corporate emails dated between 2017 and 2021 from the rotating vice presidents of pharmacy operations to the 78 district managers, with attachments including the monthly top 100 portable document format files for 28 months. He said, "I have removed any of my personal email correspondence from the contents." He said, "The materials cover the throughput pressure architecture as I observed it from inside." He said, "I am not interested in being a witness." He said, "I am giving you the materials because you are doing the work that needs to be done, and I understand you to be a person who can be trusted with the materials." I said, "Thank you, Stefan." I placed my hand flat on the envelope. I did not open it at the table. Stefan stood up. He left a $20 bill on the table. He walked out. The interaction had lasted 11 minutes. I drove home to Lake Forest. I placed the envelope sealed in the third drawer from the top of the Sentry SF63944 drawer fireproof file cabinet I had purchased at a Home Depot in Vernon Hills in October of 2019 and had installed in the corner of the second-floor home office. I closed the drawer. I sat on the chair in the office for 47 minutes. The furnace cycled on in the basement below me. I went back to the kitchen. By the spring of 2024, the analytical memorandum had reached 339 pages. The structure was complete in 10 thematic sections, covering the corresponding responsibility doctrine, the effective controls regulation, multi-state PDMP architecture, and cross-query methodology, the corporate fills per hour ranking metric, documented evidence, the district manager call-down email pattern across 312 email threads, the 4-store Devon fill chain detailed forensic, the 247 Indiana cohort comparison statistics, the Operation Charlemagne preliminary contribution timeline, the recommended Civil False Claims Act exposure assessment, and the recommended Controlled Substances Act civil penalty exposure assessment. There were 73 pages remaining. My target completion date was the 31st of May. The plan, communicated only to Imani, was to file a key TAM complaint under the False Claims Act through outside counsel in the Eastern District of New York in the first week of June. On Thursday, the 16th of May, 2024, at 10:30 in the morning, I dressed in my standard Deerfield engagement attire, which was a charcoal blazer over a white dress shirt, gray dress slacks, and black Oxfords, with the small brass mortar and pestle pin on the lapel of the blazer. I walked out the front door of the Lake Forest house at 10:47. I drove south on Route 41 to the Edens Expressway. I was scheduled to be at the Corporate Compliance Office in Deerfield at 12:15 in the afternoon for a quarterly review meeting that had been on the calendar for 6 weeks. The meeting was scheduled with Margaret Brennan Whitfield and the Senior Audit Manager Trevor Yamamoto Bregman in the Magnolia Room. At 11:47 in the morning, while I was driving north on the Edens Expressway approximately 3/4 of a mile south of the Lake Avenue exit, my contractor's cell phone rang on the hands-free. The caller identification read, Margaret Brennan Whitfield. I answered the call through the steering wheel button. Margaret said, "Nathaniel, hello, do you have a moment?" I said, "Margaret, I'm on the Edens. Give me 90 seconds to find a place to pull off." She said, "Certainly." I took the Lake Avenue exit. I drove east on Lake Avenue to Skokie Boulevard. I turned south on Skokie Boulevard. I pulled into the parking lot of the Starbucks at Edens Plaza, on the corner of Lake Avenue and Skokie Boulevard in Wilmette, Illinois, at 11:51 in the morning. I parked the dark gray Ford Edge sport utility vehicle in a parking space facing the side wall of the Starbucks building. I put the vehicle in park. I left the engine running. I pressed the button to take the call off speakerphone, and I held the contractor's cell phone to my left ear with my left hand. I rested my right hand on the lapel of the charcoal blazer where the small brass mortar and pestle pin was attached. The call lasted 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Margaret began with the standard pleasantries. She asked about Imani. She asked about Kwame at Tuskegee. She said, "Nathaniel, I need to share some difficult news with you about the engagement scope." She used the phrase scope reduction. She said, "The audit committee of the board has asked us to consolidate the function back inside corporate." She said, "The consolidation will conclude the engagement effective the 31st of May." She used the phrase, "tremendously grateful for your contribution." She said, "The firm will pay the May invoice in full and in accordance with standard contract terms." She said, "The engagement will follow a standard 30-day wind-down." She said, "We would love to have you back if a different scope opens up at any point in the future." She said, "Nathaniel, I am very sorry to deliver this news in this format." She said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Thank you, Margaret." I said, "I will wind down according to standard contract terms." I said, "Have a good afternoon." I ended the call at 11:55 and 7 seconds. I sat in the parking space for 23 minutes with the engine running. I watched a woman in a red coat walk into the Starbucks and order a drink and walk out with the drink and get into a black Toyota Highlander and drive away. I watched two teenage boys in the parking space 3 rows over throw a tennis ball back and forth across the lot for about 6 minutes. I watched the side wall of the Starbucks. I did not call Margaret back. I did not call Imani. I did not call Trevor Yamamoto Bregman. I did not call Aaron Calloway Mendez at the firm. I did not call anyone. I drove back to the Lake Forest house. I walked into the kitchen at 12:42. Imani was unloading the dishwasher. I sat down at the kitchen table. I told her in 5 sentences. Margaret called me. She terminated the engagement, scope reduction, 30-day wind down ending the 31st of May. No severance, no continuation. Imani sat down across from me. She said, "Do we have what we need?" I said, "We have what we need. Healthcare is yours through North Shore. The mortgage is paid. The 401k is what it is. The firm will pay May. We will not be terrified about money." She said, "Then finish the memo." I said, "I will finish the memo." I worked through the wind down on the standard terms. The final exit deliverable was a 47-page handover document covering all open audit follow-up items at the close of the engagement. The document was professional. It contained exactly the information the corporation expected. It did not contain a single reference to the 412-page memorandum. It did not contain a reference to the Sentry cabinet, or to the 47 internal emails from Stefan, or to the PDMP cross-query data on the Lenovo. I delivered the handover document on Friday, the 31st of May. Margaret replied at 3:11 in the afternoon. "Nathaniel, thank you. This is excellent and complete. Please be in touch if anything comes up. All the best." At 5 Eastern Daylight Time, the corporate VPN credential associated with my contractor account was automatically revoked under the standard contract termination protocol. I moved my work from the second-floor home office to the unfinished room beside the furnace in the basement on Saturday, the 1st of June, 2024. The basement room was a concrete-floored utility space approximately 12 feet by 14 feet, with a single overhead fluorescent fixture, a small casement window high on the south wall, the central air conditioning return air handler, and the gas-fired furnace. I moved a folding banquet table from the garage into the room. I moved my personal Lenovo ThinkPad and my personal printer down from the second-floor office. I brought down the Sentry SF63944 drawer fireproof file cabinet. I bought a small space heater at the Ace Hardware on Western Avenue in Lake Forest. I brought down a single banker lamp with a green glass shade and set it on the folding table. I brought down 2 yellow legal pads, 1 box of black ballpoint pens, 1 ream of paper, and the canvas messenger bag containing the 412-page memorandum draft, which by the 1st of June had reached page 343. I worked in the basement room from the 1st of June 2024 through the 23rd of April 2025, a continuous period of 327 days. Imani brought tea down to the basement at approximately 4 in the afternoon every day. She set the mug on the folding table and walked back upstairs. We did not discuss the memorandum. We did not discuss the case. She knew the broad shape. I completed page 344 through page 412 over the 11 months. I revised pages 1 through 343 on a rolling basis. I produced an executive summary, a table of contents, an exhibit list of approximately 1,847 referenced documents, and a recommended remedies and exposures section. I bound the final document in 3 black plastic comb binding spines, 3 volumes of approximately 140 pages each. On Saturday, the 1st of June 2024, at 6:37 in the morning, I loaded 3 banker boxes into the cargo space of the Ford Edge. The boxes contained the 3 volumes of the memorandum, the exhibit list, the underlying document files in printed form, and a sealed manila envelope marked Preliminary Notes from Section 1. I drove overnight east through Chicago, across Pennsylvania, into New York. I crossed the Holland Tunnel at 4:58 in the morning Eastern Daylight Time on Sunday, the 2nd of June. I parked at a public garage on 48th Avenue in Long Island City at 7:47 in the morning. I rode the elevator to the 16th floor of an office building on Court Square, overlooking the East River and the City Building. I walked into the reception area of Pellington and Sasaki LLP. I introduced myself to the receptionist, who was on duty for the early Saturday hours by prior appointment. She showed me into the partner office of Donovan Reeve Pellington MacArthur. Donovan was 71. He had served as an assistant United States attorney in the Eastern District of New York Civil Division from 1979 through 1996, then as senior counsel in the DEA Office of Chief Counsel from 1996 through 2014. He stood when I came in. He shook my hand. I placed the 3 banker boxes on the floor beside the chair. I lifted out the table of contents and the executive summary of the memorandum. I handed them to Donovan across the desk. I sat down. I did not speak. He put on a pair of half-frame reading glasses. He read in silence for 39 minutes. He made notes in the margin of a yellow legal pad. He looked up. He said, "Mr. Osei-Acheampong, this is one of the cleanest retail pharmacy corresponding responsibility memoranda I have read in 28 years. He said, "The methodology is rigorous. The cohort comparison is statistically defensible. The 4-store fill chain forensic is evidentiary grade. The corporate top 100 ranking documentation is the linchpin we have been waiting for in 2 prior corresponding responsibility cases that did not survive motion practice." He said, "We file under seal in the Eastern District of New York through the Long Island Federal Building in Central Islip." He said, "Plan for 2 to 4 years under seal. You will not be able to discuss this with anyone other than your wife. Are you prepared for that?" I said, "Yes." He said, "The firm will represent you on a contingent fee basis at 28% of any gross relator share." I said, "Yes." He said, "Drive safely back to Illinois. Get some sleep." I shook his hand. I drove back to Lake Forest. I arrived at 3:12 in the morning on the 3rd of June. Imani was awake. She had made a sandwich. We sat at the kitchen table. I ate the sandwich. I went to bed at 4:07. I slept for 9 hours. The complaint was filed under seal on the 7th of June, 2024, in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Within 14 business days, the matter was assigned to Assistant United States Attorney Esmeralda Quintero Rasamolin, an 11-year veteran of the Civil Division Consumer Protection Liaison Desk. I met her on the 17th of June in a conference room on the 4th floor of the Long Island Federal Building. She had read the memorandum across 2 days. She asked me approximately 57 questions over 4 hours. At the end, she said, "Mr. Osei-Acheampong, this is going to be a long matter. The seal will hold. Please do not discuss this with anyone." I drove home. I did not discuss it with anyone. The seal lasted 321 days. I worked on the memorandum revisions. I produced no other professional work except 3 unpaid micro-consultations to county health departments and 1 virtual lecture to the Indiana University Bloomington School of Public Health in February of 2025. I did not mention the Ketam matter. I did not mention the corporate retail pharmacy chain. I did not mention Devon. I drove down to Hammond to see my parents on the 2nd weekend of every month. The Parkinson of my father was progressing. The TWI sentence still came clean when it came. "The mind that follows you, you have lived inside it." He said it in March of 2025 at the kitchen table, without preface, looking at the wall. I said, "Yes, Dad." I drove down to Indianapolis to see Ya on the 2nd weekend of every other month. She did not ask about the work. On Tuesday, the 22nd of April, 2025, at 1:14 in the afternoon, I was sitting at the folding table in the basement. The Lenovo was open. I had been refreshing the Department of Justice Office of Public Affairs press release feed manually every 15 minutes for 3 weeks. I refreshed the feed. The top read, in bolded headline text, "The corporate retail pharmacy chain parent company agrees to pay $350 million to resolve allegations concerning improper dispensing and billing for controlled substance prescriptions." The release ran 6 paragraphs. The settlement structure was $106 million in Civil False Claims Act damages, $244 million in Criminal Controlled Substances Act civil penalty forfeiture, a permanent injunction, and a 5-year corporate integrity agreement requiring quarterly DEA supervised dispensing pattern reporting. The release referred once to 4 individuals who came forward as relators under Title 31, United States Code Section 3730, subsection B. The release did not name the relators. It did not name any individual employee, officer, or director of the corporate parent. It did not reference the 4 pharmacies. It did not reference my nephew. I read the release twice. I closed the browser. I closed the Lenovo. I walked up the basement stairs and out onto the back patio. Imani was sitting in one of the 2 Adirondack chairs with a cup of tea. She looked up. She said, "The press release." I said, "The press release." I sat in the second chair. We did not speak for 11 minutes. The wind moved the leaves of the maple at the south end of the yard. After 11 minutes, I said, "I'm going to call Ya." Imani said, "Okay." I called Ya from the kitchen at 7:31 in the evening. She did not pick up. I left a voicemail. Ya called back at 9:58. She was crying. She said, "I have been waiting since the funeral." I said, "I know." She said, "Did the company pay?" I said, "Yes," the company pleaded. "No individual is named." She said, "That is the company." I said, "That is the company." She said, "Did our name appear?" I said, "No." She said, "Good." We talked for 7 minutes. Neither of us said the name of Devin during the call. The name was not needed. I went to bed at 10:47. The relator's share was a primary insider share of $6,500,000 to me, with 3 secondary shares to 3 other relators in approximately equal aggregate. After the firm contingent fee at 28% and federal income tax at the 37% bracket, my net realized share was approximately $3,850,000. I directed $4 million from the gross share to the Devin Marcus Acheampong Bridges Memorial Scholarship Fund at the Indiana University School of Pharmacy, restricted to support a tenured instructional position teaching the corresponding responsibility doctrine, multi-state PDMP cross-query methodology, and the ethics of retail pharmacy throughput pressure. I directed $1,500,000 to the National Council on Pharmacy Practice Reform, a Washington nonprofit, to fund a national public training program for newly licensed retail pharmacists. I retained approximately $2 million in a family reserve account, earmarked for property tax, elder care for my parents, and the launch costs of the career of my son Kwame. I did not buy a new car. I did not buy a vacation property. I did not change anything in the household routine. In the months that followed, I received 9 private retail pharmacy compliance consulting offers, with annual retainers from $850,000 to $1,600,000. I declined all 9. The text of each rejection was substantially the same. Thank you for the consideration. I am not pursuing private sector retail pharmacy compliance work at this time. In November of 2025, I accepted a contractor position with the Drug Enforcement Administration Diversion Control Division headquarters in Springfield, Virginia, on a 5-year senior subject matter expert engagement, equivalent to the GS-13 Step 10 contractor rate, at approximately $215,000 per year. I started on the 2nd of January 2026. In March of 2026, the Diversion Control Division headquarters published a 217-page training curriculum revision titled Retail Chain Pharmacy Corresponding Responsibility Audit Methodology, Field Manual Section 2 Update. It is taught at FLETC Glinco in the Diversion Investigator Basic course. The methodology is drawn from the 412-page memorandum I had filed under seal in the Eastern District of New York on the 7th of June 2024. My name appears in the suggested reading appendix in academic citation form only as Osei-Acheampong, N.A. I declined the inaugural lecture invitation on the 14th of May 2026 citing the 77th birthday of my mother in Hammond. The reason was true. It was also an acceptable cover. I have not visited Glencoe. I do not intend to. The methodology is teaching investigators in Glencoe at this moment. That is the appropriate use. I drove down to the cemetery alone on Saturday, the 8th of August, 2026. I arrived at the house of Ya on West 56th Street at 11:14 in the morning. Ya cut one yellow chrysanthemum from the row at the south edge of the back garden. She wrapped the stem in a damp paper towel inside a sandwich bag. We drank coffee in the kitchen for 18 minutes. She did not ask whether she should come. I did not ask whether she would. The geometry was understood. I drove to the cemetery. I parked at the gate at 1:39 in the afternoon. I walked the 73 meters of gravel path. I stopped at plot 1414. I stood for 3 minutes. I placed the chrysanthemum on the granite shoulder of the stone of Devon, above the engraved letters of his given name. I placed the small brass mortar and pestle pin beside the chrysanthemum. I did not say anything aloud. I did not pray. I did not cry. I turned. I walked back to the Ford Edge. I drove 89 miles north to Hammond. I parked in the driveway of the brick ranch house on Wabash Street at 4:42 in the afternoon. My father was in the recliner watching the Indianapolis Colts preseason game. My mother was at the stove making jollof rice. I sat at the kitchen table. My mother set a plate of jollof rice in front of me. After about 4 minutes, my father said, in Chui, "Adwenea wakiri no, wadimu." The mind that follows you, you have lived inside it. He did not look away from the television. I said, in English, "Yes, Dad." My mother continued eating. We finished the meal. We did not discuss the cemetery. We did not discuss the settlement. We did not discuss Devon. I drove back to Lake Forest after dinner. I arrived at 11:04 in the evening. I did not tell Imani where I had been. She did not ask. She has not asked since. On Sunday, the 19th of September, 2027, at 8:43 in the morning, I sat at the round oak kitchen table in the Lake Forest house with Imani and our son, Kwame. Kwame was 23. He was on a 1-week leave from the Marshall Space Flight Center. He was wearing a Tuskegee Aerospace Engineering gray sweatshirt. The back patio door was open. There were 3 plates of scrambled eggs, toast, turkey bacon, 2 coffee mugs, and a glass of orange juice. Kwame was telling Imani about an apartment search in Madison, Alabama. I was buttering a slice of toast. Kwame said, in the middle of a sentence, "Oh, by the way, Dad, my friend in OSI is reading something with our name on it. Did you write a book?" I set down the slice of toast. I looked at Kwame. Imani looked at me across the table. Imani's face did not change. I looked at Kwame. I said, "It is not a book. It is a manual chapter. I helped with it." Kwame said, "Cool." He said, "My friend was joking that he had to go back and look up the citation appendix because the name was real. I told him you used to be a diversion guy at DEA. He said something about a corresponding responsibility curriculum." I said, "That sounds right. That is what I helped with." Kwame said, "Anyway." He turned to Imani and continued the apartment conversation. The kitchen continued. The orange juice did not get cold. I finished the slice of toast. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel relieved. I felt the way a person feels who has spent 6 years assembling a documentary record that another federal agency now teaches as a procedure to entry-level investigators in a basement classroom in coastal Georgia, and whose son on a Sunday morning has just learned that the procedure has a citation that includes the surname his father gave him at his birth, and who has decided, in the 4 seconds between the question and the answer, that the breakfast is not the place to expand the recognition into a conversation about grief, or about Devon, or about the 4 pharmacies, or about the woman in the Starbucks parking lot, or about the 11 months in the basement. The recognition is not a secret. It is simply not what I do at breakfast. On the morning of the 27th of August, 2026, 19 days after I placed the pin on the granite shoulder of the headstone, A Crown Hill groundskeeper named Eddie Thompson found the pin during routine maintenance and carried it to the maintenance shed. He placed it in a small wooden lost and found drawer. The pin remained there for 5 years. In June of 2031, during a facility renovation, the contents of the drawer were placed in an unmarked banker box and donated to a Goodwill Processing Center on East Washington Street in Indianapolis. I do not know what happened to it after that. I have not gone back to ask. The aphorism does not require its return. My name is Nathaniel Adjei Osei-Acheampong. I am 55 years old. My father stood at a pharmacy counter in Hammond, Indiana for 35 years, in a white pharmacy coat with a knit tie, with a small brass mortar and pestle pin from the Indiana State Board of Pharmacy on his lapel. He told me one thing in 6 different ways. Be slow at the counter, son. He told me at the kitchen table on Wabash Street. He told me in the front seat of the Pontiac Catalina at 6 in the morning. He told me at my group supervisor promotion in 1995 when he gave me the pin. He told me in Chui on Sunday the 29th of September 2019, 6 days after his grandson Devin Marcus Acheampong Bridges had died alone in an apartment on East Pleasant Run Parkway South Drive in Indianapolis of fentanyl toxicity in a counterfeit M30 pressed pill. My nephew was 23 years old. He had a torn anterior cruciate ligament from the Pike High School football team and a 6-month post-operative pain management prescription in 2018, and a chain of refills that grew across 4 pharmacies in 3 states in 9 months. The corporation that operated 3 of those 4 pharmacies paid $350 million on the 22nd of April 2025 in a settlement that named no individual. The corporation continues to operate. I was slow at the counter for 6 years. The fills per hour metric was the gate. The corresponding responsibility doctrine is the regulation. The 4 pharmacies were the pharmacies. The 412-page memorandum is the memorandum. The settlement is the settlement. The curriculum is the curriculum. The chrysanthemum lasted 19 days. The pin is somewhere I do not know. My nephew is in Section 32, Plot 1414 of Crown Hill Cemetery on Boulevard Place in Indianapolis. The work was the work. That is what my father told me. That is what the system asked of me. The corporation paid. The aphorism holds. That is enough. It has to be.